Hi, this is Chris Newson. Welcome to the Root Cause Analysis podcast, where we'll take our listeners right to the heart of the important EHS issues. We're coming to you live from Woodland Grange, a conference and hotel venue in the Midlands. In this first ever episode of the Root Cause Analysis podcast, we'll be looking at how you can turn your relationship with the HSE into a positive for your business. We'll be talking to the HSE themselves and one of our accredited Make UK EHS consultants. So we now welcome David Butter to the Root Cause Analysis podcast. David is the head of manufacturing sector team for the Health and Safety Executive and has 33 years experience of frontline regulation and policy committee roles. David has represented the HSE and chaired ISO and CEN safety standards committees. Welcome to the podcast, David. How are you doing?
I'm okay. Thank you for inviting me.
No problem at all. Looking forward to our conversation.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Brilliant. Fantastic. So you're the very first ever guest on the Root Cause Analysis podcast. So you'll be able to look back on this in years to come with such pride and all of that sort of stuff. We really appreciate you joining us today on a serious note, because I think that the role of the HSE and the work that you do clearly is very important in the UK and very important for our membership to understand exactly everything you do, I think. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I think a lot of interesting things will come out. But again, thank you for giving up your time. I'm sure you've got lots of other things to be doing. So we'll start at the very beginning. So tell us a bit about how you got to be in your current role as Principal Inspector for the Health and Safety Executive. How did you get to where you are?
Well, it's a little bit of a journey. As you said at the start, it was nearly 34 years ago when I started. I was obviously much younger then, and HSE was quite a little bit different then as well. It was, and I joined the Agriculture Inspectorate. So there was the Factory Inspectorate, there was the Construction Inspectorate in those days, and the reason that I joined is because I grew up on an arable farm. So all my elder brothers are all still involved in the industry. My dad and my mum come from the industry, so it was me not quite carrying on the family business, as it were, but it was going into an industry which I knew well. And I thought I could bring my practical experiences into the role, and as the Agriculture Inspectorate was pretty much what it said on the tin, was going out and inspecting farms.
Okay. Do they still speak to you? Are they okay with you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because there are not many people who don't know somebody in that particular industry who's either had a near miss or actually have been caught. Yeah. And it's one of those industries where very often you're working on your own. So what might not be a particularly serious incident in a factory or on a construction site, if you're miles from anywhere with no communication or no means of getting assistance, it can be quite serious, because it may be several hours before somebody realises somebody's not back. Yeah, they've gone out to film. Okay. So and I think also I did engineering degree. So, and growing up on an arable farm, my interest was in engines and machinery and things with steering wheels and stuff. So, and again, when I did the standards work, that was on agricultural machinery safety standards. So it's quite interesting because that field is quite narrow. So sometimes I was bumping into people I was at university with who were sitting across the table from me, representing the manufacturers. So, but again, I already had a relationship with them. I knew their background, they knew my background. So that was very useful in that arena. So after that, I moved back into frontline work. Then I did a bit of policy work with the Gangmasters Licensing Authority as it was when it was being set up. Okay. There was some work to do before they got their powers, etc. So I worked with them for 2 years and then returned back to the frontline work. And then in the role, I was promoted into the principal inspector role in what we call, in a frontline team. And then about 3 or 4 years ago, I was asked to move into the current role, which is the manufacturing sector.
Okay.
So, sounds quite short, but that was 34 years in the making, nearly.
Right. Yeah,
so,
interesting. Okay, so I mean, what I think is interesting there is that, as you explained very well, you've got real experience of being in that industry. I'm thinking about agriculture to start with. You actually came from there, and so. Do you think the HSE look for that? I mean, do they look for people with experience to go and regulate and enforce in those industries?
It can be an asset. It's not the only thing. You've got to be able to talk to people.
Yes. Okay.
That's the skill that you need. People can learn a lot, and I grew up in an animal environment. I know nothing about livestock, so if you threw me onto a livestock enterprise, I would be okay. This is completely different to what I know. So you can't know everything. It is an absolute impossibility to know everything about everything.
Yeah.
And even now, I can remember it was a few years ago. I was going out with one of my trainee inspectors, and we were on a farm, so I was in my home environment, and there was a piece of equipment I'd never seen before. And so I asked them about, and they said, well, yeah, you won't have seen it before because we've got the only one.
Right.
So even with all of that, you'll still come across things that are unique.
Yeah.
And that's sort of one of the very interesting things about being an HSE inspector is you get the privilege of sometimes seeing these things and these processes which are unique.
Yeah. I can relate to that. When we go and we're in the manufacturing sector, but our consultants go out and you see things all the time and inventive things, and I think UK manufacturing is right on it's right there in terms of innovation, isn't it? It has to be. So you're seeing new things all the time. So
I mean,
interesting.
When I go through university, I learnt to draw on a drawing board.
Yeah.
So with a paper and various sized pencils.
Yeah. Same here, by the way. Yeah.
I was never the best draftsman, I'll be honest. And CAD and CAM was in its infancy.
Yeah.
If we wanted to use CAD, it slowed the whole campus down. We had to use it at night for that very reason. And it used to take about 5 minutes to draw a line from here to here. So I've had the privilege of seeing that when I've gone into manufacturing premises, from the way that they have implemented CAD and CAM systems, how they have gotten production more efficient, better quality, because very often if you're trying to feed a machine to do it automatically is better sometimes than, I'm sure some machinists will be shouting, saying, well, I can do it better than the numeric control can do it. But yeah, I mean, there's huge differences, and some of the best things about automation is getting people away from those jobs and those tasks that aren't very nice, keeping people out of hazardous environments. We've seen simple things like an endoscope or a webcam.
Yeah.
Well, you don't need to go in a confined space. You can stick a camera on a stick and stick that in and look at whatever you need to do. But when I started, there weren't such things. There wasn't such thing as particularly as the World Wide Web, etc. So those things have come through. So, and I'm often fascinated by some of the things that businesses do, particularly in some of the niche areas. I'm quite interested in looking at that, but also those people are very often very proud of what they do because they understand, this is a unique process. Now, they're more than happy often to probably go to a bit more depth than they probably would do with other folks that sort of knock on the door randomly at random day of the week.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's. I often say this to any groups. I have the privilege of seeing lots of different things and processes that you wouldn't get to in any other real walk of life unless you happen to be a consultant or similar.
Yeah.
But yeah, just the breadth that we get exposed to, it's really good.
Yeah. It's really interesting. So I think if you, I don't know, I've got no evidence to back this up, but people's general perception, manufacturing and safety, I hear a lot of people talking about, cutting corners and, how can we get this done actually, if you go out into manufacturing and you visit certainly, our expansive amount of members, they're doing those inventive things, and you talked about cameras or endoscopes or whatever it might be. That's right at the sort of top of the hierarchy in terms of not having the person in there at all, and those things are a lot more affordable now. And of course, there are always companies that are willing to talk to you about these solutions. So that's a huge change that certainly I've seen in that time. Interesting. Now, I really would like to talk more about draftsmaning, I guess that's a word, and different grades of pencil and so on. Maybe we'll do that later on. But we'll get back to the HSE here. So you've talked about your journey to the HSE, and so the rest of your family are all properly in agriculture, if you like, and you've gone into the HSE. And you've explained that journey. Why did you do that? What made you say, well, I'll go this way rather than that way?
Because I thought I could help
the
industry,
yeah,
which I came from. Because, as I said, there aren't the industry is quite insular, and it doesn't like outsiders telling it what to do.
Okay.
So one of those drivers for me, well, I've done there, I've been there, I've done that, I've sat on that seat. I've operated that machine. I know, again, if you talked about what you're going to do if you're going to cut a corner, well, I know exactly what somebody's going to do. And if somebody tells me, oh, they always do it this way, well, actually, I could challenge that because I can know, well, you're not going to be doing that at all. So that was, it was for me to help. I thought I could help the industry because, it was something that I had some background to, and I could bring that into the role that I was applying for.
Yeah, perfect. And you talked about, what you've perhaps seen before in terms of people get injured or hurt and that sort of stuff. And I think, well, I don't know if everyone knows this, but you and I are aware that if you look at statistics in the UK in terms of accidents, injuries, and worse, I mean, agriculture is consistently the top or somewhere near the top, isn't it? So it's a dangerous business to be in, and unfortunately manufacturing is not too far behind that even nowadays. So we'll switch tact a little bit here. A bit of a difficult question for you now. I think perhaps some of our members and wider UK manufacturing will see the HSE as you can use different terminology here if you like, but the sort of HSE police, and there's a negative connotation around that perhaps. Is that fair, do you think?
I mean, people are entitled to have their own opinion, and that's perfectly fine. I think it tells an awful lot about their thought processes.
Okay.
And if I sat back and said, well, what do I think of the police? Well, I think brilliant, because they are going out catching people that are stealing things, that are hurting other people, are doing so. I think fine. If I was a criminal and I was stealing things, I might have a differing view. So if I apply the same model to our inspectors when they're going out there, if you're a compliant business that understands what they need to do and have, and all we're asking for is all that's reasonably practicable. And if you're comfortable with that, then you wouldn't have any issue with one of our inspectors knocking on the door, and because you're quite comfortable in the fact that actually we do actually know what we're doing. So whether they want to say that's the police, that's entirely up to them. If you're not compliant, then you may have not necessarily negative, but you certainly have a defensive point of view. But our role is not to go around and taking the time up those businesses that are compliant. That's not what we're here to do. What we're actually here to do is to visit those non-compliant businesses and make sure it's an even playing field for everybody. Because your members that are there, that have done it, they shouldn't be at a business disadvantage from business that don't comply with health and safety law, and therefore undercutting them, that they're missing out on contracts or what have you. That's not right.
Agreed, yeah.
So if our role is to police those, then I'll quite happily take that. It certainly don't have an issue with putting that label on, but that's what we're there to do, is to make sure those non-compliant businesses are brought up to the standard, at least of minimum compliance, so that people who are doing the right thing aren't unfairly disadvantaged by those businesses that willingly choose not to comply. That's not right, and that's not fair.
Agree with that. What would you say to the challenge that, again, this is anecdotal, I'm not thinking of a particular example, but manufacturers might say, well, if you look at the letter of the law, we were perhaps not compliant, but we weren't putting anyone at risk, and we're then enforced against there, and they'll start to talk about things like fee for intervention. They might have a view that certain bits of the law are quite vague. Health and Safety at Work Act Section 2, keep people safe. I'm paraphrasing what it says, as you know. But, that's often a discussion point that they'll have. We're not doing anything majorly wrong. We've tried our best, but the HSE don't agree, and then they'll talk about fee for intervention and all those good things. What do you think about that?
Well, we will never win. I can't. There are two sides to the argument on the law. So if we're very prescriptive, as we have been in the past, the very narrow focus so-and-so order or regulations of 1946 that require you to do this, business will say, well, that's restricting us. Yeah. That's restricting us so much. So if we then go to the Health and Safety at Work Act, which, if you look at the way the law is written, it is brilliantly crafted in that it moves with technology, it moves with the times, because what it's requiring business to do is all that's reasonably practicable. There's loads and loads of case law. Although it's vague, it is goal setting. It's saying to business, well, it's your risk, you're best placed to manage it, and the standard that we're looking for is, have you done all that you could, or have you left something that you could have done and not done, and now it's caused a case of ill health or an injury, in which case then we'll ask them to explain themselves to a judge or a jury, whatever it happens to be, and it's for them to decide whether that has been done. It's not for me to decide that what's been done is all reasonably practical. It's for the courts to do so. So I think we do try and strike a balance. The law, the underpinning law is goal setting. It's goal setting for a reason. It doesn't have to change. It moves with the times. And although it's very broad, but that's kind of what you need to do. You need to look after the people that work for you. And that's looking after their health. Yeah. It's looking after safety. That's making sure the equipment they use is maintained. And you give them instruction and training for them to use the equipment, do the process, so they keep themselves out of harm's way and keep themselves healthy. Those are very basic things. But then to supplement that, obviously there are other regulations which are looking at a topic, and very often we've got codes of practice, or we've got leaflets, or we've got information sheets, or we've got guidance which do explain them a little bit more. Because we understand that certainly SME level, where the larger businesses will love the goal-setting approach, and they've got resources, probably in-house, and they're more comfortable with that. Sometimes at the SME end, that very often they would like examples. We've got examples of risk assessments and all sorts of things on our website, so that the goal-setting legislation is there, but we've given some examples as, here's a way forward for you, this helps you out, this tries to interpret what that goal-setting standard, is requiring you to do. Okay. So, but there will always be people that don't like the goal-setting side, there will always be people saying, we don't like the prescriptive side. So we have a mix of both, and hopefully the mix is right and helps most people. I think it does, in my opinion anyway. I think if I can bring a slightly different perspective to it, just for a second. So what Make UK also do, as well as going out and consulting and helping members, is teaching and training. And so I've got, like you have, but for different reasons, I've got a really thorough or deep understanding of the law, purely because I've had to explain it to students coming through the EHS ranks, and it's really interesting
when you look back in history, isn't it? You know, you talked about prescriptive, and if you go back to the Factories Act and those sort of, we talked about a long time ago now, and actually if you look in other countries, even now, it is incredibly prescriptive. You must do X, Y or Z. And I agree with what you said. I understand some companies might want that, but if you say that, you know, you can't do that really, because it's very restrictive, and you have the same standards for your massive blue chip organisation and, you know, for a smaller company. By saying reasonably practicable, and if we look at that in its base terms, right, it's risk versus cost. We know that. So risk versus cost. I would imagine question one, when you go along and speak to someone, is you look at a particular activity. Can you show us the risk assessment? Because how else have you proven to yourself as an organisation that it is reasonably practicable? So to me, that's I don't know if it is question one or not, but there's an example there where that's pretty obvious and straightforward law, that if you're doing something with hazards, you must have a risk assessment.
Yeah.
So go from there.
And for us is to look at the risk assessment's decision making against the control that we will see.
Yes.
So if we see a particular risk being controlled in a certain way, then the answer is, well, how did you get to that? Or why did you get to that decision? Well, that's where your risk assessment comes in. Well, this is our thought process. We saw there was a problem here, we've applied this, and this, and therefore we will bring that down. And that's for the business to do. It's your risk, it's your workings out. So we wouldn't necessarily be going in asking for bits of paper at every time, because what we want to see are the risks controlled.
Okay. Yeah, the results of the risk assessment.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's what's going to protect people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I often say, bits of paper help, but they aren't. And if you've got a piece of paper and very often I have seen very pristine folders sitting in people's offices behind the individual that I'm talking to, and they've never been opened.
Yeah. There's a clue there, isn't there?
There is, and it's almost some sort of dismay. And I remember distinctly, I went to a business, and I knew the colour of the folder. I knew who had produced what was in the particular folder.
Okay.
And he was very indignant, and I didn't ask to see it.
Right.
As I was leaving. So I said, absolutely fine. If you want to show me, show me. Presented me with it was a very thick A4 binder full of lots of information, none of which was relevant to the business, because I knew it was a set of templates that had been provided for them. And I said to him, well, I've seen it before. He said, what do you mean? And I just went through it. Have you got this particular? No. Well, in your pile of paper, it says that you have. Went through. Okay. And then he realised that actually that wasn't helping his business. And unfortunately, had paid a lot of money for it. But in the very front, and I've read it many times, there's a disclaimer, this is your risk, we are just helping you out. So that's why I'm more interested in the control that's put into place. And then if I want to understand why it's gone this way rather than that way, that's where I would say, well, let's have a look at your risk assessment, because I want to understand why you've gone for this option rather than another option. Rather than it just being almost like some sort of insurance policy that sits there, oh, we've got a piece of paper, and if somebody asks for it, we can show them. Yeah. That doesn't, it's not efficient. It doesn't help the business. And I get a little bit, not upset, but it's seeing some businesses who they can do it themselves. They know the business. And sometimes we'd often get asked, well, you know, who can do it for me? Well, if you genuinely have not got the time and you feel that it's a better investment that your time is doing what you know, and you bring somebody in, make sure they've got a knowledge of your industry, or they come from, you ask somebody that knows and understands, because if not, if you was bringing somebody in to improve quality, you wouldn't randomly select somebody you would look, you do your diligence and understand. And if you'd paid all that money for a report on improving the quality of your product, you wouldn't just park it on a shelf. I just hope somebody at some point in the future will ask you to refer to it. You've got a reason for doing that. And sometimes I think, hopefully not so much now, but certainly, you know, in the early days of the risk assessment process, cost assessments, everything that was coming in the early 90s, people sort of just went for bits of paper. Well, that's not what the end result should be. It's not a piece of paper, it's actually controlling the risk and controlling it in the most efficient and effective way that is easy for the business to manage. You're not creating all sorts of overheads for it, and it's keeping the workers safe. It's not generating necessarily pristine binders on a shelf.
It's interesting what you said there about, you know, you're likening it or comparing it, to quality management, right? And you know, quality management, and many people that have done health and safety have done quality as well, or currently do quality as well. And yes, you know, you've got procedures and bits of paper for that, but in my opinion, they don't just sit on the shelf, because if they just sat on the shelf and you didn't use quality control paperwork, well, you'd put out a product that wasn't the right standard and you'd pretty quickly get it sent back by the customer. And so we care about products and getting them right and putting the right processes in place, because it's driven by needs of the business at the end of the day. And I suppose it's similar with safety. There's no point in just having your stuff on a shelf, right? You know, have stuff that actually keeps people safe. And we talk about health and safety at work at, you know, number 1 or section 2, keep people safe. So if it's not doing that, it is literally a waste of time, and in your example there, a waste of money.
Yeah. And it's, I mean, I've had 2 instances. One was where I was doing a visit, and there was somebody in the workshop just dry sweeping, so sweeping away in this cloud of dust.
Okay.
And I sort of just said, well, just talk me through what's happening over there. And he sort of looked and said, well, they should be doing this, right, okay. Well, we've done a cost assessment. But I said, well, what have you done with your cost assessment? It then dawned on them that they'd created a committee and everybody sat down and everybody had written this, and we'd done some wonderful work, but then forgotten to share it with the people who were actually doing the tasks. And it wasn't until I said this, then you could see the light bulb come on. I won't use the words that he used. I said, oh dear, me. We seem to have forgotten a very important part of that process, that people do sometimes can get fixated on the process, not on the results. And we use, I mean, the quality circles and continuous improvement, all these things you can apply if you look at HSG 65 and all of those good things. You can apply them, it's coming back to it. And the best businesses, and this is my opinion, that I've seen are those that don't believe they're very good.
Okay.
Don't believe they're very good at health and safety. And that's because they're always on this journey to get better. They're not sitting, you know, on the sun lounge and think, oh, we've cracked this, people. You know, stand down. That complacency will get you. Maybe not today, maybe next week or next year will come. But and I've seen people who just have this thirst for knowledge, and not just within their industry. You know, do you know anybody that can do this better than us? Because can you tell us? Can you give us those examples?
Heard that question. Okay.
And those are, you know, for me, they often would be crestfallen because I would disappear after about 10 minutes. I said, well, yeah, but what? I said, yeah, but you don't need me. You know what you're doing, you're there, I will go where I'm needed, which is get your competitors up to somewhere there where, but you know, you're up here, we need to get people who are below the table up to the table, and then start hopefully getting them to think about it in the way that you have. So there are lots of parallels, and you know, we see, and again, the privileged position that we have as inspectors, that we see different management systems, you know, whether it be world-class manufacturing or whatever it happens to be, but if we can fit health and safety into those procedures and processes, it's not an add-on, it's integrated. It's part of the business, and it shouldn't be, oh, and then we need to think about health and safety. No, that should be ingrained into what you do. It's not in the, and you know, same with other aspects of what businesses have to do.
And people say that all the time, don't they? But it's absolutely true. That's what we find. That health and safety should be considered at the same time as everything else. Financial performance. I don't know any company out there that doesn't really care about financial performance and doesn't look at it with really focused view. Well, it's the same thing with health and safety. It should be right and quality, and they're all the same. And I know that's a cliche, but it is true. Not because it's the law, but because it's the right thing to do to keep people safe.
Yeah, and I had an interesting encounter with a site manager.
Okay.
Who he had this view of his board of directors, etc., that they were managing by crisis.
Okay.
And I said to him, well, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, I'm fed up. He was very down to earth. I used to go there quite a bit just because of the nature of the business. But he said, I'm fed up with any time anybody knocks on our door, whether that's a customer or me or somebody else, he says, there's blind panic. He said, the call goes out. He said, you know the drill. You've signed in at reception. Quick. He says, that is no way to run a business. He said, I'm fed up with it. And so what he did was, he said, right, I've sent all of our directors on the CMIOSH managing safety course. He said, they need to understand that it's them. They are the ones that are going to drive this. I'm here as a site, I'm doing the best that I can, but I need to start at the top, get that buy, and it works through everything else. And I went back, I think it was several months later, and I said, he says, it was brilliant now. He says, they now understand that this panic crisis management wasn't. He said, it shouldn't matter if it's a customer, a regulator, we should operate our business every single day with the confidence that this is the way that we do it. This is us. Why are we making special things for when people randomly knock on our door?
It's got to be real life, hasn't it? That is how you do things, not like, because it doesn't matter who you are. I mean, most people can see through something that's just a pretense.
Well, I can see brush marks on the workshop floor that's been about 10 minutes before I've turned up. It's, we...
Sure. And you notice if they've sent everyone home, right?
Well, yeah, there are some businesses that seem to go awfully quiet.
Yes, yeah.
About 10 minutes after I've signed in. They're on a break. Oh, there's this, or it's early. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, understandable. Just if we can, as being a bit of a health and safety person, I mean, I am enjoying talking about the law and those sort of things here. So one of the not challenges but questions we get very often, whether it's in a teaching scenario or we're out talking to a member, is, we won't go through every regulation, you'd be glad to know, David, but in manufacturing we think about machinery quite a lot, and we think about therefore the PUWER regulations and so on. And that regulation 11, so you've talked about reasonably practicable and balance of risk and cost, and that's most things are like that. If you look at machinery and you think about guarding, that's a different sort of duty. It's practicable. And so everything within, without reading out the whole definition, everything within your invention, everything you can possibly do. And we will often get members, whether it's, as I say, during a course specifically on PUWER or just in a conversation, well, that's not reasonably practical. It's not cost versus risk. It's just everything that you could possibly do. And, we then go through the hierarchy, talk about fixed guards, etc. And they'll say, well, I've got this machine that's 40 years old, 50 years old, not uncommon. Right, usually in SMEs, and does that mean I've got to put a fixed guard on it because that's what the hierarchy says? And our answer to that is you've at least got to look at that, and you've got to have a really, really good reason why you don't do that. And so then you get into more of a conversation, and you end up with, well, do you appreciate how many accidents are caused by machinery and people putting their hands in places that they don't, that they shouldn't, and so on, And to me, that's, yes, it's the law and it's different and it's practicable, but actually, people getting hurt with machinery because there isn't a guard is a really, really serious issue, and people's lives are changed and altered and all of those sort of things. So, just an example of a harder law, but actually, it's fair enough. You have got to do everything you possibly can So I just wondered what your opinion was on that specific part of legislation.
Yeah, I mean, we often, and it's not only with old equipment, it's with new equipment as well. And I always say to people, is that work with if you're putting a new plant in, then work with the equipment installer and manufacturer until you've paid them. You've got an awful lot of power. Once the bill's settled and they've disappeared out. And sometimes making sure that things work with older machines. But even with older machines, there are solutions out there. And the reason why that business may not have had an incident is good fortune. Yeah. That's the only thing. And unfortunately, if you took me around somewhere, I could say, well, I've done something on that. I've some instance. I can't explain to you why it happened. All I know is it's happened. So if you can prevent something that's going around, entangling somebody, then you do that. And sometimes it may not be, it might be a little bit of brute force. Well, we'll just guard the whole, we'll put it in a cage, sit it over there, happy days. We're not doing small things, and that's the easiest way for us to do that. And that's where your risk assessment process comes in, is what's the best way for us to tackle that. So rotating things, they will catch somebody if they're not guarded. And it's just good fortune, whether it's this week, next week, or the week after. Hot things will catch somebody out at some point, and if you're giving off fume or mists or dusts, eventually it's going to affect somebody's health. Similarly with noise, again, you don't get the instant consequence of something that's rotating, but often it's too late to do anything about it. If it's 10 and 15 years down the road, when somebody's got poor respiratory health, or they've got vibration white finger, or they've got noise-induced hearing loss, you can't take a tablet and you're going to get your hearing back, you're going to get your breathing back, you're going to get... It's your life is affected from then on in. So I think, again, it's that whole process of, and I use this, be kind to your future self.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
What are you going to say to your future self if your future self has lost a limb because it got wrapped around an unguarded rotating shaft? What are you going to say to yourself that, well, you could have done something about that? What are you going to say to your future self if you've now can't hear the TV because you weren't thinking about controlling noise? What are you going to say to yourself from this point here? And I know it's very difficult sometimes, certainly with health issues, but that's what you've got to do. You've got to look after your future self now, because later on it's too late, I'm afraid. And say there are no magic things to get your quality life back, get those things back. So if you take that, have that sort of thought process, whether it's through your risk assessment or looking, you turn up and you see something, you think actually it's not quite right, well, go and tell something about it, or fix it if there's a spillage or there's a gearbox that's got some oil. Well, don't wait for somebody to slip over it, because again, thinking about your future self, well, if you step over that, somebody walks behind you, falls over, knocks himself out, does some severe damage to themselves. Well, how do you explain it to them? Well, why did you leave it? For me to have an accident when you saw it first. So it's thinking about these things helps concentrate. And if you're looking for sure. Understand why, well, that's always my stock answer. Look after your future self.
And that's a great answer. I mean, it literally, seriously does answer all those questions, doesn't it? Because why are you doing health and safety? It's to keep yourself safe and and everyone else there. And I think whether that's from a health and safety point of view, as you're talking about there, or a legal view. If you're the managing director of a company, there's that keeping yourself safe legally. You don't do that by insulating yourself from decisions and putting a big health and safety management structure in. You do that by keeping people safe. That's what's required. The interesting thing I think with that is you touched on earlier the CMIOSH course So there's different versions of that, but IOSH leading safely now, and obviously I've got a bit of experience of delivering that. You know, the syllabus spends about 2 minutes on the law, and about the rest of the time, you know, however many minutes that is, on almost the moral side. You know, why should you care about people? And I think people do inherently care about people, but it's reminding them of what health and safety is about. Keep people safe. You know, look after your future self, as you said.
Yeah,
you know.
and say you can apply that through most levels of business, because looking after your future self, if you're the CEO, whatever it is, well, actually, are you comfortable standing up in front of a judge and saying, we did all that we could to prevent this from happening? And if you can't, then you need to go back and start to do something about it and look at it through your business, because that is the ultimate looking after your future self, because not only are you looking after the interests of your business, you're also looking after all the interests of all the people that make that business tick and work and produce the things that you sell. You know, and very often people say to me, you know, their employee is the most important. Well, okay, show them that you're the most important thing.
Yeah, convince them that that's the case, right? You know. And
I said, you know, again, we go back to we've talked about risk. It's your risk. Yeah. It's not my risk to manage for you. It is your risk. How comfortable are you with that ultimate sanction? And you're standing there on your own in that dock saying, we did all that we could. Yeah. And if you're comfortable with that, fine.
Exactly. And I think, you know, if you take that even a step further, so we talk to members all the time, and personally I've spoken to over the years, lots of managing directors or whatever title you want to insert, you know, the person that's in charge of that company, usually SMEs I'm thinking of here. And, you know, those that have been through an accident, right? And I've spoken to people that have been through an accident, I've spoken to people that have been fined and worse. And this, again, sounds like a cliche, but it isn't. The thing that sticks with them is not the company fine or the personal fine, perhaps, or the even worse thing that might have happened to them, but it's that feeling of they could have done something for Mr. or Mrs. X that worked at their company that now, as you said, you know, doesn't breathe correctly or suffers, can't see, can't hear. You know, I know that's getting a bit direct, but that is the thing that sticks with people. I could have done something, you know. So that really, you know, I think personally, if people have that in their mind when they're making these decisions, you know, you'll automatically comply with the law, because the law is to keep people safe. You know. Yeah.
And it's the same for everybody. And I say our role is to get those people who are ignoring it, not taking it into account, to bring them up, so that it's a level playing field, because people shouldn't be disadvantaged. No, good businesses should not be disadvantaged by those that are willfully ignoring the law and then being able to undercut on quotes, etc. That's.
I don't think anyone would disagree with that. We're nearly out of time, David. But we've spent a long time during this conversation talking about the sort of enforcement side, and it's been, you know, incredibly useful, I think. Just tell us, what else do the HSE do? Because they're known for enforcement and all those sort of things, but I know, and you know, that they do lots of other, what people would consider positive stuff. Just give us a bit on that.
Yeah, I mean, most people's experience is when an inspector knocks on the door, either to do proactive inspection or because something's gone wrong and they're doing an investigation. But that's only sort of, we have this triangle, right, and that's one corner of the triangle. Okay. So one of the other corners is our research. So we have our science division colleagues. We have a facility in Buxton in Derbyshire that's quite high up. So in the winter, it's sometimes would be a bit of a challenge if there's a bit of snow to get there. But we commission, in my role, we commission research. So at the moment, we've got some research looking at, and we've had some work being done on 3D printing. We've had some work looking at novel materials and the health effects, etc. So, and we do publish those reports. And if your members are so inclined, they can delve into our resources on our website. And very often, some of those research projects are done in in conjunction with stakeholder groups such as yourselves. So members, you know, when we've been doing some work, we may go to one of the stakeholder groups that we sit on and say, you know, can somebody volunteer for some of our science colleagues to come out to measure this particular process or that particular process. So very often, obviously, we need for the research to be very often be meaningful. We need real life workplaces to go to. Although some of the work we can do, you know, we can replicate and do in the labs. So we've got the research side, and that's about making things, improving things. So sometimes we'll look at different bits of technology. We'll look at also sometimes if there's market surveillance work, looking at actually is that doing what it says it's doing or not. We can sometimes pick things up through that work, but also if we've got looking at new and emerging risks as well. We've got our foresight team who are looking forwards as well, trying to understand what's maybe coming towards us that we need to understand. And they also offer a commercial offering there as well. So if people want them to do things for them, they can. So that's the research element. And then sort of for us in the sort of the policy corner, so we're the ones that do this. We talk to stakeholder groups. We have in manufacturing, we have an awful lot of groups. And my team, I don't sit on them all. I only sit on a couple, but my team does. And that's useful because that's a brilliant way for us to communicate directly. So if we've got a message and we want some assistance to amplify it, we will ask, you know, and very often our stakeholder groups are really, really good. People have said, yeah, I'll be a signatory to that. They'll put something out through their comms and we'll work together with our communications team. And again, the guidance that we do is there to help, and the vast focus of our guides materials at the SME end. It's helping, you know, if we've got a goal-setting piece of legislation, well, what does that mean for me in my circumstances? That's helped why we've got example cost assessments, we've got example risk assessments that are in those typical smaller environments to, you know, for people to understand that's the kind of level you need to go to. And again, it's making sure that people put the effort in, they're getting the maximum benefit back from it, the same as anything else. As I said, you know, sometimes when you go to business, they've had something done for health and safety and put it on the shelf. Well, what was the point? Why would you do that for a quality report? Would you do it for a finance report? No, you'd implement what's gone on. And I sometimes I think it's a little bit of disconnect there. But hence why we do try and help with those. And also, I said having us in the policy, and I sort of sit in between the front line and policy we call operational policy. So we are the conduit to industry. So we've got the routes we can talk to our various groups, and they can talk to us. And it's not in the, you know, sometimes it's a little bit difficult if you're standing on a site and want to have a conversation. So again, it's, you know, their members can, you know, they can go through their reps and talk to us. So we've got the investigation inspection side, which most people see. We've got a huge amount of work, and again, we publish pretty much all of our research into all sorts of things. If you went and looked at the list of reports, depends on your interest. You may find lots of things of interest here. Then, I say on the policy side, we're the ones that's looking at the guidance, and you know, so we try and use communications. And again, things have changed. So you know, depending on what social media, whether you're on LinkedIn or you're on Facebook or on things, you'll very often, you know, we have various campaigns and we'll put things out. So at the moment, one of my team, you'll see appears with metalworking fluid quality checks and stuff that we've done with stakeholder groups, with little videos and stuff and short things that we put up, and the links to those through LinkedIn and other sort of social media things as well. I think we do Twitter as well. Oh no, it's X now. Sorry, it's the they've changed it.
We know what you meant.
Yeah.
Who knows?
So we do those things as well. So we are trying. So we've got a bit that's going out and checking and making sure everybody's okay. We've got a bit that's researching, and we've got a bit that's trying to help and encourage and move people in the right way. So, but yeah, people only see one corner.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and to me, just going back a step, you talked about health and safety as a sort of almost iterative process, a bit like quality, continuous improvement, and the really, you didn't say exactly these words, but the companies that are really good at health and safety, those ones that are never happy and they're looking towards the next thing. There's so much. We use it all the time as teachers and consultants. There's so much guidance there and answers to questions. People can't say, I think that, well, the HSE just come and knock on the door and tell us off. They don't do anything. They don't help us. Well, there is lots of help. The level of detail in some of the guidance. Most regulations is an approved code of practice. It's got all of the explanation of what it means. It can't tell you all the answers because it is goal setting. So that's approved codes of practice. And then you get down into the specific guidance note on, I don't know, silica dust or something. And that's where you're talking about the research and the sort of best practice that you've done comes out.
Yeah, and it's also, some of them are written for differing audiences. So for things, we've got our medical series. So those are written for the occupational hygienists. How do you test for this? How do you do these things? What are we expecting to see? So some of our what we call CMIOSH essential sheets, some of those are quite technical because they're for a different audience. But it's, but yeah, we do have an awful lot of stuff. And it's some of the challenges knowing it's there in the first place, then you're able to find it, which is always the always the question. But we do have, I do remember I get lots of emails, and we had one from the Japanese government who are interested in what we've been doing with the food and drink industry. We have the FDMF, and they were interested in what we'd set up and how it was working and what we did, which was good, for that group. That was good recognition for them that, somebody an awful long way had seen, the pages on our website and were interested in how it came into being, how it's being set up, because they were looking perhaps to do something similar over there. They didn't invite us over, mind, but
what a shame.
I know. But yeah, that's good. And when I was doing the standards work in particular, the majority of that was said and was in Europe. But everybody always referred to our guidance if we was in the committee meetings, etc. And it was quite strange in the end in lots of those, in that it got to a point in lots of the committees that they were separating out UK brackets HSE, then UK sort of industry comments, because it was sort of really nice to see that actually all of that work, and there's an awful lot of work that goes into producing those bits of guidance, etc. And the last thing that we want is it to sit, again, I've said about the CMIOSH assessment sitting and gathering dust. We don't want to write these things to sit in a virtual library collecting dust that nobody wants and nobody sees. And again, that's where sort of in our operational role in our sort of corner of the triangle is to have that conversation with the industry and say, well, what is it you want? We consult with you. Is this going to work? Do we need to present it in a different way? Is it too high level? Is it too what? We need that feedback so that we get it set at the right level. Again, it's pointless, my team putting hours and hours of work in and our web team in designing stuff that nobody wants to click or nobody wants. It's not helping anybody, is it?
No, agreed, and it is a great analogy that it's like that, really clean binder that you talked about that just sits on the shelf. It's there, it's available electronically, it's free. It's not restrictive if you're a big company or not. It's free, and it's good stuff because I've been to the labs that you're talking about. It's amazing work they do. So you're doing all that to help people, and it's not as simple as this, I know, but it's just like read the guidance that's there, use all these resources, and I suppose communicate with us if that helps. And I think I'll just finish with, because I know we were talking about this before the interview. We have monthly calls, and we try and represent as best we can the views of our members to the HSE and vice versa. I know our members out there have got lots and lots of best practice, lots of great things they're doing, inventive stuff that you talked about. But sometimes I think there's a reluctance to share that, maybe not with Make UK, but with the HSE. And I just think, the stuff that you're talking about there, it's incredibly powerful to share that good practice, that best practice. You can share it with others. It's not a commercial secret. We're trying to keep everyone safe here. So that's one shout that I'd give out to my members. If you've got some best practice, let us know. And
And I used to, even as a local, operational principal inspector, if I saw something that was good, and I was in another business, and they said, I would just, if you call so and so up there, and if you can trade what you do here to learn what they do there, you might have a mutual understanding. And in my bit of Nottingham, there was about 5 or 6 businesses who, through various connections, sort of interconnected themselves. And that's, you don't need me here. That's, you can share what you... And they used to trade... Yeah. They're all from completely different businesses, so there was no issues with, competition or anything like that. They were from completely, you got people from the food industry, talking to people from, building products side to engineering companies. They were but they were still having the challenge of how can we do things better? Well, I've seen somebody who I think is quite good at that go and talk to them. And I even had a managing director of a very niche business called me up and said, David, I'm fed up. I think, okay, I wonder where the phone call's going to go for a while. He said, I'm fed up. So I said, people think I'm the bad person, that I'm going out on the shop floor and I'm just shouting at people because their housekeeping's not right, they're not managing this. And he said, I need to show them that it shouldn't be like this, that you can manage it and it's not a big thing. Where can I take them? And I knew a business just up the road from them who were in a completely different environment. And these are the ones that were, in this continuous improvement who didn't think they were very good. Yeah. And I said, phone up. They're about 2 miles from you. Phone them up and say, would you mind if I could bring some of my people round to see what you do and how you do it? I said, you might see that, it might open everybody's eyes as to what is achievable. And I think for us in the sector, obviously lots of things that our inspectors is the, it's the poorer end, because that's their focus, and quite rightly it should be the focus. But the relationship, I think, through organisations itself, we don't want to, and certainly for us in the sector, is to miss this is really effective. This is really good. We've saved money. We've done this, and we're actually improving, control of substances or whatever it happens to be. And we can anonymise those. We have in some of our committees we have a feedback form where we encourage people to come in, and it's useful in lots and lots of ways. We get we talk to lots of different industries. So if somebody's come up with something, it's the benefit of GB business. If that can be shared with them, it's helping everybody. And if somebody can say, well, actually, we've costed it out, and and very often when we look at CMIOSH, is a brilliant example of where if somebody's got a good idea, it can help so many different people, because everybody looks at CMIOSH and they look at, we've got to protect the person from the substance that has whatever it happens to be. Great, we'll just shove something over the mouth or shove something in their ears to... That is the most inefficient and most expensive way of controlling that risk. What we'd love to do is to get people starting at, not at the PPE end here, but look at the elimination. As I said,
top of the hierarchy.
Top of the hierarchy. So the best way to manage a confined space is not to have one. The best way to manage an explosive atmosphere is not to have one in the first place. That's the simplest and easiest way. There's no overhead, there's no ongoing controls or what have you. But and people have said it's impossible, and there are. I mean, if you're working in wood, you've got to work with wood. So we can take that out, fine. But don't then just plump for the lowest
There's
level.
some other layers in between.
Absolutely. So what would be really useful is those talking to us where, thinking about start at the top and work down. Don't start work at the bottom, up. And just because, and that's where industry can help industry, is to have people can say, not just me saying, that's not efficient and that's not the best way to do it. Sort of spoke about at the very start of this, why I came in. I'm from agriculture and I want to help agriculture and help, a voice from within, if you like, helping it sort itself out. Well, we tried to do that in a sector from manufacturing point of view is, if you've got manufacturers that have done this, they've got the benefits and they can bring you a balance sheet and say, look, this is the investment that we made has paid itself back over 10 times in 3 years, whatever it happens to be. Learn along with us. Yeah. And it may be something completely different, but it's just, if we can spark these different ways of looking at things, like think about your future self. It won't happen with everybody, but if we can slowly get a few, and then they slowly tell another few, and another few, and another few, and then hopefully it's...
and it's positively received. Absolutely. And all of that happens.
Yeah.
Well, leave that with us and our members, David, and we'll do what we can to sort of change the way that works. So look, thanks very much for your time today. It's been absolutely fascinating. I've really enjoyed it. So thank you. We're now joined on the Root Cause Analysis podcast by Mark Stubbs. Mark is a EHS consultant for Make UK. Mark's worked for us for 4 years, is based in Derbyshire and manages all of our members in that area. Mark also looks after our EHS members group on LinkedIn and our EHS software forum. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Chris.
Really appreciate you taking the time. Sounds like you're very busy. Obviously we know each other very well. I know how busy you are. So thank you for joining us.
And not a problem at all. I'm looking forward to this.
Excellent. Are you doing all right today?
Very well, thank you. Yes, it's
Brilliant.
nice to take a little bit of a break from seeing people out and about, and I'm looking forward to doing something a little bit different.
Perfect. Yes. I mean, exactly. We rarely get time to sort of sit down in person and just talk about life. So I'm looking forward to it as well. Yeah.
Excellent.
Nice to not be on Teams or whatever it might be.
Indeed, it is. Or in a car.
Indeed. Agreed. Yeah. Perfect. So. We've obviously worked together for quite a long time. We know each other quite well. We're going to talk a little bit about your impression of how we should work with the HSE, what our members think about that, and get some real sort of frontline experience from you. And most excitingly, it's very exciting, I would imagine, to be part of the first ever episode of the Root Cause Analysis podcast.
Indeed, exciting and a little bit nervous, as you can imagine. Of course, it is completely different to what we're used to. We feel like we get a bit of a feel for things like this on Teams, but this is on a whole nother level.
Yeah. But I'm sure everything will go.
It'll be great.
Yeah, no pressure at all. Fantastic. So we'll start with an easy question then. Tell us a bit about yourself and what you do for Make UK.
Okay, so this year's going to be my 5-year anniversary with Make UK, and it has been a whirlwind. The support we get from the team is absolutely phenomenal, and for me, I feel that I can go and visit a member and offer them support and advice purely because of the support that I've been getting from the team, including yourself and all our other consultants. So I mean, for me, a typical day kind of consists of things like site visits. We can do different audits. We can look at training potentials for members, whatever they wish that they feel they need. We could even simply just go and visit people and have a chat about health and safety. Some of our members are just wanting to sound off to us and use us as a bit of a sounding board. And that's quite nice. We could do work on policy. We can look at completing risk assessments or specific risk assessments as well. And of course, as you've mentioned there, we do the EHS software forums. So that's kind of a nice thing we do once a month with the users of the software. We get together on Teams and we just chat about the software, and we give them some technical advice and support. And it's quite an interesting job that we do. And obviously when not visiting members, I'll be generally working from home. That might include catching up on emails. chatting to you, of course, over
Yeah.
Teams.
Yeah.
We might be answering, I say me,
Yeah.
but we as in the wider group of consultants. Yeah, we'll be responding to different queries that members might send in to us. And obviously liaising with the other brilliant people within our business and just to get a better understanding of Make UK's membership database as a whole, really.
Okay.
So that's good. So yeah, it's a really interesting role.
So and it's interesting you said there about, you know, you could go into a company and you listed off some things there, but effectively, you know, they could ask you to help with anything in terms of health and safety, couldn't they? You know.
Yeah, generally we'd have a chat before we go to site. We get the scope about what they want us to do, and yeah, we can go and deliver that. It's great, and like I say, you know, the backing that we've got from the rest of the team members just gives you that extra confidence as a consultant to go in there and feel more confident to go and deliver that, whatever it is they want us to do.
Yeah, I think that for me that's really interesting, because, you know, we've got a team of consultants, as you say, and everyone in health and safety, everyone's got a certain expertise, haven't they?
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to be an expert in everything,
Yeah.
so, you know, you might be an expert in a particular thing and you go and help a company, but they might have a question about something else, but you've got this wider team of people you can ask. So
Absolutely, yeah.
I know from personal experience that's really beneficial. It's like having a multidisciplined person. So, you know, hopefully our members feel that coming through. I'm sure they do.
Oh, totally. And you know, where there are subjects that you're not overly familiar with, we do little CPD sessions with each other, and we can just jump on a Teams call.
Yeah.
And one of the consultants who's got a specialist in that can just talk to us about it, and we can learn and ask questions, and it's great. It just adds more to the competency.
Yeah, fantastic. I know there was one the other week about the DESIR regulation.
DESIR, it's a tough one to get your head round, but you know, chatting to team members, it becomes a lot clearer.
Yeah. Nice,
yeah, great.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for that. Now, going a bit into, you know, some of your experiences with those members, earlier in the podcast, we had David Butter from the HSE on. What do you think, and I'm looking here at members you've talked to, what is their general impression of the HSE? What do they think about them?
So members I talk to, I mean, in terms of visiting sites, I'm talking to different people from various disciplines. You know, we'll liaise with quality experts, workshop operators, you know, people that work in laboratories, project managers, directors, administrators, anybody really within the business, as well as the health and safety professionals within the industry. Feelings are, my personal feelings, employers, they understand that the HSE, what it is, what they're there to do. There's still that element and that fear of the auditor. I think there's that fear of the auditor syndrome, perhaps, especially those from the non-health and safety background. But most health and safety professionals, or the employees that work within that industry, in our industry, totally respectable. Totally respectful. They understand the HSE's reason. They understand their presence. It has to be there. To be honest, I think most of us, me included, would relish the chance to chat to an inspector, just to sort of understand what they do. It would give us a great opportunity to learn more, how we can improve our workplace as well. So I think from the health and safety employment side, there's that potential. And you know, there's more potential for us to understand it better. The non-health and safety side, there's still that fearful element, I feel. Okay. A lot of the members we speak to, and you imagine we've got a lot of traditional businesses that we go and see, their views, their methods of working can still be in that vein, that quite traditional mindset. And they may not be as receptive to the HSE as maybe more of a modern business or certainly somebody from the health and safety background. Personally, I try and change that mindset. You know, there's a good reason why the HSE are there. Unfortunately, there's still some very convincing non-health and safety professionals that do add a little bit more of a challenge to get that mindset across, or that mindset change. And I think as well, if they've had that bad experience with the HSE, it's very hard for them to come back from that. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I mean, normal human nature. So you talked there about, and it's interesting the demarcation you make between health and safety professionals and non-health and safety professionals.
Yeah.
And you talked in the second group about I don't know if you use this word, but like the fear of the HSE maybe. Do you think that's justified?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Personally, I suppose we've got to expect, we need enforcement. If we breach the law, there's a consequence, isn't there? And we've got to expect there might be a visit from an enforcing authority, and those consequences need to be clear, really. Employers that are employing health and safety professionals, they do it for a reason, to try and be compliant with the law. The fact is that we've gone through a whole host of qualifications, we've gone through so many different competencies, we improve, we have to consistently upgrade ourselves through continuous professional development for us to understand the law and to understand what the HSE's role is. So for me, employers are employing people like me and health and safety managers in their businesses to help them overcome that. I think engagement would also help. Engagement with the HSE is possibly a good thing if there's ever a chance that could happen, so that solutions and best practice can be realised a lot more and a lot easier in organisations.
Yeah, because I think I agree. I think the HSE, well, we know the HSE have experts in things. They know what they're talking about. So they are there to help. I mean, if you look at how much, I don't know how you measure this, but if you look at how much the HSE spend, I'm quite sure they spend much more money on writing guidance and helping and, whatever that looks like than they do actually enforcing. So there's loads of things. So that there's, as you say, the best thing is to reach out to the HSE and talk to them if that opportunity arises. And even if you can't do that, even interrogating the website, looking at what's available, because it will be good stuff.
Yeah. There's a whole host of resources out there that people can access, and it's difficult to defend yourself if something goes wrong because there's so much information available. But nothing beats face-to-face, does it? Me and you are having a chat now. If we could have this sort of chat with a HSE inspector on our work site, wouldn't that be amazing? But resources are tough. We know that.
Yeah. So I mean, you sort of answered my next question, which is always good. But do you think then that employers should actively reach out to the HSE?
I would like that to happen, and if I was to give a positive, then yes, it would be great if we could. Okay. But I think the HSE needs to possibly encourage that engagement. Okay. So I've got an example where an old employer of mine, I was working there and said to him, look, I'm new to the business, I'm in industry. I want to invite the HSE in so they could just have a look round and just give me some advice and see how I can improve, see what we can do better. The employer basically says, oh, you can't do that. No, don't invite the HSE in. If they find something, there'll be a whole world of pain we'll have to face. Yeah. And so ultimately I didn't, and it still grates me to this day that I couldn't have that engagement with somebody with a higher level of knowledge, higher level of competency than I had at that time, for somebody that I could go and talk to and rely on. So yeah, I was just totally discouraged, and yeah, I really wish I could have done that and had that opportunity to speak with them. Whether they would have responded in the right way, I don't know, but I think at least by asking the question, it might have created a nice little engagement between us. Yeah. The company I was with at the time, who inherently were not an unsafe company, so there was nothing to hide. But it's just, again, going back to that original point, that fear of them coming onto site.
Which you can understand, can't you? When you look at the powers of the HSE and the things that they can do, understand why people, and again, making that demarcation between EHS professionals and not, maybe that's goes a long way towards it, but you can understand why people are afraid, because as we know, and lots of people listening will know, they have a lot of power and they can shut you down, they can fine you, they can give you improvement notices and so on. So it is a big risk, or the negative side of what could happen is there. But as you say, if you're trying to do the right thing, I know, and you know from speaking to the HSE, they do want people to talk to them and help, and they want to sort of change this mindset that's there.
Totally, and they get to a site and they'll call out the poor practice because that's their job. That's what they have to do. The fact is that if they see a crime, they've got to report. They've got to do something about it. That's what their job is. But on the flip side to that, could they not applaud the good practice? Could they not highlight the good practice? Can they mention that a little bit, more wider than just aiming at the employer? Perhaps they could say, look, we've been to this site and we've seen this. This is brilliant.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
okay.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, I think they're in such a great position because they see so many sites, and yes, they are pointing out the poor practice, but there's a whole lot of good practice which we see.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, they go into lots of different companies. They can share best practice. They've got lots of experts. They've got laboratories that they test things and blow stuff up, and that sort of thing. So they're learning all the time, and it's passing that information on.
Yeah.
Okay, they can do it through the website and guidance, but that conversation, if we can sort of change that behaviour, and I think there's things that can be done on both sides, like you say, but that's important. Yeah,
definitely, and will that be a change in reputation? Going back to the fear of the auditor reputation, or the perspective or perception, I suppose, is one way. I mean, not everybody's got that clearly, but if a minority of people have got that perception, how wide does that go?
Yeah.
So by lauding the great things that are happening in industry and advertising that, that potentially could enhance reputations, couldn't it?
100%. And I think that's a really interesting thought, because if you think about what we do, and we're not the HSE, we're not enforcers, we don't have any of that power. But we share best practice, don't we?
Indeed, we do. Yeah.
Whether it's via the LinkedIn group that we mentioned at the beginning, or whatever it might be, member case studies. So I think that's incredibly powerful. Yeah. And we always are trying to get members to talk to each other. So if they could do a similar thing somehow.
And we've got a great relationship with the HSE. We work with them on campaigns. Yeah. They come to us and talk to us about these campaigns that they're looking to promote and get out there. And again, why not use our framework for them to, advertise good practice that they do see? That would be great for us. That would be great for our members, certainly. If they see that other organisations are doing something different, better, good, that can be shared via HSE through us, then that's another vehicle for them to be able to do that. Yeah. So I think that would be really, really useful.
I agree. Yeah, and it's interesting when you think about that. As you said there, we've helped the HSE, let's say, with two campaigns. Was it last year? Metalworking fluids.
Yes. Asbestos, I think, was it?
And asbestos, yeah. So end of last year, beginning of this. Yeah. And as you say there, the one thing they're asking for is member case studies, and I just feel like you're saying that bears this out, that members are unwilling to just have a chat and share a case study, because obviously then it opens the door to what if we got it wrong. And if they just stop and think for a minute, actually what we're talking about is best practice. It's not like have we broke the law, it's the next level. Yeah. But there's such a fear there, and I completely understand it because of all the powers they've got. But going back to what you said, it's things that can be done on both sides to make that a more proactive relationship.
Yeah, certainly.
I had a really interesting conversation this week, actually, with, it makes me sound very naive, but I've never come across them before, the OPSS. So they're a government agency, and their job is to enforce things like the supply machinery regs, the CE marking, UKCA and so on. And they were saying, they've got exactly the same, they're not the HSE, they've got exactly the same problem. People won't sort of put their hands up and say, can you help us with this? And we're not really sure how it works. I mean, UKCA marking, for example, is quite complex, right? Yeah. So then they want people to ask them, and we were having the same conversation, why don't they? Well, they're afraid of getting prosecuted, etc. Yeah. And the lady I was talking to, who is the head of the enforcement agency there, says, well, I understand that, but in reality, what we look at is things like the maturity of the regulation. So they were talking about a regulation, not CE marking, but something that had just come out. So we look at that, and we look at, and you said this, the willingness of the company to try and comply.
Yes.
Yeah. So if you're trying your best to comply, that's a completely different story to if you're trying to not do things. Right, exactly, yeah. And quite rightly, again, as you said, the HSE are going to take action if you're not even trying to implement the law. So, so my point is that if you look at these government enforcement bodies, HSE or OPSS, whatever it might be, you know, they are sensible. They look at what are you trying to do and take a pragmatic view.
And maybe organisations don't know that well enough.
I don't think they do. Yeah.
No. But again, they could use organisations like us to be the vehicle for that and get that message out there, definitely. And enhance reputations all round.
Yeah, that's right. It's the positive side, isn't it? Sharing best practice. Because, again, as you said already, but just to elaborate on it, we have that strategic partnership with the HSE. So, okay, if you don't want to talk to the HSE, talk to the HSE through Make UK. And back and forth. And
that's a great point. Absolutely. Yeah. Because of that relationship we've got with them, then certainly organisations could ask us the question to then. I see that. Yeah, that's a really good idea.
But even that, I think that's a lot lower risk, and therefore organisations are more willing to do it. But I think even then we have to do a lot of encouraging to get people to do it. But you know, it's about having both sides doing things differently, employers and the HSE, and coming together and you know, showing how proactive we can be. And then, you know, it just changes the behaviour. You know, we talk about changing behaviour quite a lot in health and safety. This is sort of top level behaviour that could do with changing.
It sounds good. It is very interesting.
We should sit down and talk like this more often.
Do you think we should?
I think so. We've solved all the problems in the world, which is always nice. Yeah. Fantastic.
I'll just encourage you with a few nods and hms.
I think you've added a lot of insight, as you well know. Okay, brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time, Mark.
Okay, great.
Fantastic, brilliant.
Lovely. Thank you.
So I think what I've taken from the two conversations we've had today are that the HSE are there to help us, and if we can reach out to them and try and have a positive relationship, that will help us in our main aim, which is to keep people safe. This is the part of the show where we talk to one of our consultants who's going through the IPD process to become a chartered member of CMIOSH. Hopefully it will help to demystify that process for you. Hi Leila, how are you doing?
Hi Chris, I'm good. How are you?
Yes, very good, thank you.
Good.
Nice to talk to you. Be better in person, but at least we're talking. Yes. So thank you really very much for doing this. I know you're busy, taking time out of your diary. I think that our members, and particularly the ones on that professional development path, will really find this useful. So again, thank you. So let's dive straight into it. Could you tell us a bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Leila. I work for the rather wonderful company as Make UK, which I know I'm allowed to say on this, definitely.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely. So I live in the southwest of the UK, and that's the area that I'm covering with Make UK. But about me, so I'm at home with my hubby and 2 children, which are lovely, I assure you. And so what do I like? Music, singing, any chance to perform, I am there. That is what I enjoy doing, which is potentially why I like the whole training side of things, because I see that as a really good opportunity to get my enthusiasm out to everyone else in performing up and about and all that sort of good stuff. So yes,
definitely works well. That
a little bit maybe. So that's a bit about me. How I got to where I am. Well, that's actually, I feel that I'm incredibly lucky to start off with. I joined a company back in 2010, and I've always been someone who wants to get their nose down, get on with things, but also wants to progress. So I'm always looking for that opportunity and sort of going, is this something that I can do? Is it something I can support with initially and see where we go from there? And the company I joined, although I joined the engineering department, within sort of 6 years of being there, I kind of felt that perhaps it wasn't quite me, but they didn't want me to leave. So they actually said, we have this amazing opportunity in health and safety. Would you be interested? And I said, I don't really know much about that, but absolutely, any chance to develop, to move myself forwards, absolutely. So they were wonderful, because they put me straight on to the NEBOSH General Certificate course with EEF, or Make UK, as we know them.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So did that with a very wonderful trainer, and was successful in my GC. And then they put me through AIEMA, so then the environmental side of things, again with EEF Make UK. So I'm getting to know EEF Make UK quite well at this point. Successful with that, again, fantastic trainer from Make UK, can't thank him enough for that. Then PIEMA. Again with Make UK, I'm sensing a bit of a trend here, I think.
Yes.
Again, successful with that. And then lastly, the company were excellent at helping me with my NEBOSH diploma, again through Make UK, definitely sensing a trend. And again, successful with that. So I've really managed to sort of get my L plates off and get running through the opportunities that I was given, but all through the training with Make UK. So very successful, NEBOSH diploma. And then when the opportunity came about for Make UK for a Southwest consultant, I may have gone, oh, yes, please, because I think it's rather awesome. That would be lovely. So that's how I'm where I am today.
Brilliant. And as you say, there is definitely a trend there, isn't there?
Just a little bit of a trend, just a little bit.
And we should say, I hope that that's not uncommon. We haven't. Obviously, you work for Make UK now, but it's not a setup.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Yeah. So amazing, and for us, it's worked really well. We've known you for a long time through the path that you've talked about, and now you work for Make UK. So it's all, it's all
brilliant,
fantastic. Exactly, yeah. So, so that's sort of how you've got to where you are now. We really want to focus on in this conversation the next bit, really, the IOSH bit, that journey. So, tell us a bit about. Tell us what level of IOSH are you now,
sure.
And then we'll go on to sort of the next step. So, what are you now?
So right now, because I was successful in the NEBOSH diploma, which is a level 6, that gives you a gateway straight into what was known as the grad IOSH level. It's now the certified IOSH level.
Right.
So I do understand that if you'd done the GC, the general certification beforehand, that could take you in at the tech IOSH level. But because I was already at the diploma level, that gives me opportunity to go straight in at that level, because you've shown your capability within a health and safety environment.
Yeah. And so again, just so everyone understands, literally you can use the letters Cert IOSH after your name.
Absolutely.
Because you've done the
Post-nominal.
diploma
Yes.
And you've passed that. Yeah. Okay, fantastic. So that's where you are now. The next obvious question is where do you want to go next, and why?
Well, I will be brutally honest with you. I am one of these that, although I like to progress, I have to work really hard at it. I'm not one of these whiz kids that can go in and just pick it up and get 80, 90, 100%. No, I work really, really hard. And if I pass, then it's a real reason for celebration. Let's put it this way. So
I can relate to that. I'll just tell you, I'm quite similar. Yeah. Okay.
So sort of 12 months ago, coming off the back of the NEBOSH diploma, it was hard. I mean, people that are looking at this, that are perhaps looking to do the diploma, don't kid yourself. Just because it's an open book examination does not mean it is easy. You do have to work really, really hard on it. And I thought that was it. That's where I am. That's where I want to be. And then joined Make UK, and now it's like, okay, that kind of like the pain of the diploma is fading away a little bit, and now for me it's chartered all the way. And chartered IOSH, I think, especially working for Make UK, especially in the industry that we are in, especially the way things are not changing, and we want to be the change going forward. I think for me, chartership is the icing on the cake. It needs to be that, do you know what? Not only have I had this amazing career where I've been very successful in obtaining all of these accolades, but now I want the icing on the cake. I want that, the gold star, if you like. So I now have the what's the word, that bit of drive, that chartership for me, please, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, I understand. And do you think, I mean, you spend a lot of time with companies and lots of different health and safety professionals. Do you think that having those letters after your name, you know, CMIOSH, chartered member of IOSH, do you think that is, does it mean, in your opinion, does it mean something legitimately?
Honestly, the answer is yes. So
Okay.
I am aware that there are people out there that suggest that, you know, do you really need letters after your name? You know, is it just for you that's for? And the
Right.
answer is,
Yeah.
do you know what? It is for me, because it shows how hard I have worked. But also for those that are in the know, and those that dare I say, follow this industry, the health and safety side of things, when you see CMIOSH, you know the detail, you know the depth, you know the hard work and effort that goes
Yeah.
into obtaining those. It's not just me putting those on the end of my name because I can. It's this is the hard work, so that hopefully when you come to talk to me, I should know what I'm talking about, she says. Should.
Well, I think there's lots of evidence to suggest that you do, so that's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I mean, that is really interesting, because I hear that. I mean, people will say, you know, do I really need it, etc. Is it just a, you know, a vanity thing, you know?
Yeah.
But if you know enough about it, which you obviously do, it's hard to get, and therefore it does mean something. It hasn't always been that way. It used to be very easy to get. I mean, I'm talking, you know, 10, 15 years ago. Now it's hard. Therefore, when you've got it, people know you've proven yourself. So
exactly.
Okay, so it's good to know that just a reality check, that is what other people think as well.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to the real, you know, the sort of the thing that our members will find really useful, I think, which is what's the plan? So we've talked about where you are and where you want to get to. What's the plan? How will you get there? How long does it take?
Okay, so my rather illustrious leader, Mr. Hamilton, has approved all the bits and pieces that I need to be able to go in and register through the MyIOSH portal that I have for what is called my IPD. So that's where I need to now be demonstrating the knowledge and sort of all the good stuff that I've got. And as I understand it, there's criteria within the IPD that I need to satisfy, and then have a closing interview as well, and then make sure that IOSH want to make me a chartered member. How about if it's okay if I just share to show you what I've got, because I've literally just registered with the IPD. If that's okay.
That would be amazing. I think that'd be really useful. Yeah, brilliant.
Okay, so let me have a little look at this. Please let me know when you can see my screen.
Yeah, got it. The technology has worked. That's excellent.
Okay, so reaching out to those who perhaps don't know what the whole process looked like. So this particular screen that I'm looking at, this is the My IOSH area. So because I'm certified, or what was graduate, I already had access to this. But this part here, this My IPD, wasn't available to me. So literally now I've just registered, I have the My IPD area that I can go into, and it's going to say to me here to go in and update my IPD online now. And that basically, unfortunately, I believe I'm not actually able to show it to you because there might be GDPR. It doesn't come up when we share, but I can talk you through what's in there if that helps.
Yeah.
So for me, because of the route that IOSH have requested that I go down, when I click on this, it takes me into the area that shows what does the route look like, how can I get through the route. It gives you literally a step-by-step guide of how to complete, how to register for when you want to submit your information, all that sort of good stuff, how you go about filling in the criteria that you need to show. It also gives you sort of like little dummy areas so you can go in and have a little play with it and test it as well. So it's kind of, before you go jumping in both feet, you've got that opportunity to go, well, what does it actually look like? So that's quite good. So like I say, this is straight from the My IOSH area into the My IPD. When you click on that, it goes straight into this little portal, and it's literally all for you in there. And my advice to our members would be, use it. The information in there is really good. So go in and have a good read of it.
Okay.
So it's definitely worth it. But the other thing that I know I need to do off the back of this as well is just above this, and you'll have access to this before you've registered for your MyIPD, but you need to know that your CPD is what will be audited after you have completed certain requirements of the IPD. So you need to make sure you're keeping your CPD up to date as well. And that's you can go into now. So if you're thinking about doing your IPD and your chartership route, get your CPD up to date. Start going in there and becoming familiar with it. Because when you click on this, sorry, Chris.
So so just I think we're going to show us, but just so members understand here, or anyone listening understands the CPD, because I did this, but it was very different a few years ago and so on. So these are genuine questions, Leila.
Yeah.
The CPD is always going in the background. I know that I have to do that, like you have to do that. So we'll have a look at that in a second. So that's just ongoing, and it's about how you develop. But the IPD, initial professional development, that's a specific set of activities you have to undertake to become chartered.
Yes.
Okay, right. Yeah.
And part of that, and I really wish I could show you, but unfortunately I can't. But it is quite straightforward when you get in there, I promise.
Okay.
But part of that is they do say to you, you have to fulfill this criteria, and we're also going to audit your CPD. So it is part of that whole IPD process for moving into chartership. They're going to be doing that.
Brilliant. Okay. So go ahead. Yeah, show us.
I was going to say, advice to the members is be really familiar with your MyIOSH. As you can see, it's not difficult. It's all there. It's all good stuff. But when you click on the My CPD, you actually go into the blueprint area, which I think IOSH introduced sort of about 12 months ago. I think it was.
I think that's right. Yeah.
And when you first go into your CPD side of things, you have to fill in a load of questions. You kind of have to answer some of their, what's your thoughts on this? And it kind of gives you a plan that you're going to be then working towards as you go through your year, your career, all that sort of good stuff. But this is what it looks like. So here's where you go in and log your CPD. And as you can see, of the required 30 hours this year, I've done 38. That's thanks to Make UK. Every opportunity there. There's me an opportunity again. You can go in and open your PDP, which are those areas where you have said, this is where I now need to perhaps improve myself or do a bit more work on, or indeed just become more familiar with. But I think what's excellent about this for me is that IOSH, they give you opportunity to improve. They give you opportunity to learn about ethics and organisations, and that counts towards your CPD hours as well. So if maybe our members are struggling, thinking, well, what does it mean? What does it look like? Start having a look in the library. I mean, 1,324 resources available that you can start to improve yourself, better yourself, get greater understandings, and it all counts towards your CPD, which if you're looking for chartership, you're going to get audited on it, and it all kind of like closes that loop beautifully. So yes, so this is where I'm at the moment. CPD.
Amazing.
I'm on that, and to be honest, I've got a little thing in my calendar that says once a month, just go in and check. Is there anything you need to update? Is there anything you need to do? IPD is, I'm going in there, I'm having a look, I'm reading the guidance because it's still new and sparkly to me. I want to understand what it's all about before I jump in and get on with it. But the guidance in there is excellent. And really, my recommendation is read it, because you'll love it.
Perfect. It makes sense. I mean, it's interesting because I can relate to doing this, X number of years ago, whatever it might be. And it wasn't that long ago, but none of it was online, all of those things. And what certainly wasn't the case were all these IOSH resources. And, I see a lot of people make comments on various social media platforms about what they think about it. But, I've done, because they're mandatory, I've done those e-learning bits at the bottom, ethics and me, etc. And it's good content, like you said. So I would agree. So it's not just, so I think that the key things for me are, you say what your areas are of development by answering some questions, and then you can plug in the IOSH resources to fill those gaps.
Absolutely.
We've said that the three at the bottom we can see are mandatory, but the rest you can choose from. And again, I'll just add this, where I think people get, what's the word? There's a little bit of misunderstanding is, well, there's some IOSH resources for you. You can use them, or get your own or mix and match both. I mean,
Yes.
there's definitely some good stuff there, but there'll be other stuff that you want to do, whether it's attend a conference or a webinar or whatever, and that goes into your diary as well. It's completely up to you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I mean, would you agree with that? Hopefully I'm not doing it
100%.
wrong.
No, but I actually think that a lot of people don't necessarily understand that. They'll say to me, what am I putting in my CPD? What does this? And I say, well, did you attend, for example, the Make Health and Safety surgery that we did a couple of weeks back? You can put that on your CPD because that's you attending. That's you looking to gain more information. That's your professional development. That's what you're doing. So those are the items that you can log on here. And I think I actually believe that people are out there doing all the good stuff. They're just not realizing that that's what they can be recording down, and that's what they can be using towards chartership and so on.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think as a EHS professional, you do professional development, right? Yeah. All the time, because you have to know the latest stuff. That's just a fact. I agree. And it's just about logging it, isn't it?
Yes, indeed.
Put down what you like. It's usually good stuff because you're having to do it anyway. Yeah. Amazing.
I'm just going to stop sharing this as well, so that's if you're happy that we've had a look at what
100%.
we need to. Perfect.
Leila, it's been really, really useful. So look, I'm going to let you go because you've got a lot of things to do. Would it be all right if we check in on future episodes of the podcast and just see how you're doing in that professional journey? I think it'd be really useful for people.
Absolutely. You can join me in all the fun and games that I'm sure are coming.
Amazing. Yeah. And of course we're here to support you and all of those things. You mentioned Lee already. He'll be there to help you along the way.
Him.
Yeah. Amazing. Excellent. Brilliant. Thanks, Leila. See you again soon.
Chris. Speak soon.
Thanks for joining us. Hope you've enjoyed today's show. Make sure you subscribe so that you don't miss out on future episodes, and I'll see you on the next one.